Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well. For the past 6 months, I've been thinking about creating a direct booking website for my short-term rental. It's probably a no-brainer for anyone who has multiple listings, but for me, someone that only has this one beach house, is it worth the time and effort and money to make a direct booking website for your short-term rental? In this video, I'll share all the pros and cons that I weighed for the last few months and how I eventually came to the decision to move ahead with setting up a direct booking website. I did reach out to Logify, which is the software that I ended up choosing, and they were so open to me sharing completely my honest thoughts on the pros and the cons so that you can make the best informed decision for your business and for you. A huge thank you to Logify for partnering with me on this video, and I'll include their link below. Okay, so let's first start with the pros. The first one is reducing fees. This is certainly one of the bigger gripes people have when relying on an online travel agency, or OTA for short, like Airbnb and Vrbo and Booking.com. The host commission and the guest fees, those are fixed. And on average, they range about 15 to 20% in total. Allowing for direct bookings would eliminate that. Your guest would get a discount and you get to keep a little bit more of the revenue. It's kind of a win-win. The second benefit of having a website is it helps broaden the reach of your short-term rental. Websites like Airbnb and Vrbo and Booking.com, part of why they're charging a commission is because they're bringing potential guests who are already looking on their website, and those guests may eventually book a stay with you. In other words, they're providing a marketing avenue for your property. I don't want to diminish how powerful that is because they have much more brand recognition than your short-term rental can have. There's a lot of built-in traffic and a lot of potential people who can discover your property that otherwise would never have. However, whether a guest sees your property in the first place is very much dependent on the algorithm on Airbnb and Vrbo, and you can try to optimize for the algorithm. I have a whole video talking about that over here, but ultimately at the end of the day, that's not something you have complete control over. Instead, if you have a website and you can accept reservations directly, and you couple that with some social media strategy like an Instagram account and some search engine optimization or SEO with a blog on your website. There's also strategies you can use with an email list, with Google Vacation Rentals, kind of like an additional set of tools for broadening your reach. You can employ all of that and add a whole other avenue of attracting eyeballs, enticing potential guests with discounts and offers, or providing information and some sort of value, and ultimately, hopefully, driving some sort of revenue in booking your place. When you use a software like Logify to set up your direct booking, it also actually functions as the property management system that syncs your calendars so that you can continue to automate all your guest messages and make sure you're not double booked, even with this additional source of receiving bookings. The third benefit that was important to me is that having your own website allows you to build your own brand. So when you're using Airbnb, Vrbo, whichever one, you are kind of limited to the aesthetics of what that branded website looks like. How many photos you can display, the order in which people go through the description, and then the about your space, and all the house rules. How is it all displayed? How is that browsing experience on the website is very standardized to that platform. But on your own website, you have full control in customizing that unique experience that a potential guest may have. You can highlight the features you find most compelling. You can showcase your property in the sequence that you want the guest to experience them. And overall, you can just organize information better than trying to squeeze the most important information into however many characters is allowed, or messing with the order of your photos because you want the first 5 to show up a certain way. All these things you're able to fully control and express in a way that makes sense to you and how you want to portray your property. Additionally, on the point of brand recognition, I have had so many amazing stays at different Airbnbs by just traveling this way for the past decade or so. If a friend ends up going to that same destination, I would love to make a recommendation for these places. However, a lot of them don't have a specific name, so I don't really remember what it looks like or what it is named on Airbnb. It would take me a little bit of effort to find, and therefore sometimes I just don't end up making the recommendation, which is totally a shame to waste a warm recommendation like that. My fourth reason for wanting a direct booking website is just to look legit. Because half a year ago when I started, I thought, well, I could also just build a brand presence and offer information via an Instagram. I'll make a logo, I'll make a name, and there, that's my brand. Or you could be thinking I could somehow collect these guest email addresses by them logging into the Wi-Fi, and maybe I can reach out again later and see if they want to book with me again. Which, by the way, could be kind of risky gray area with Airbnb policies, so I personally don't want to risk that either. My point is, sure, there are other avenues of like either email or Instagram or some sort of other social media that can connect you with potential guests and allow them to book with you directly. But how are you going to communicate availability? Have them just DM you? And then how are you going to handle the payment? Like send you a Venmo? Like it all just sounds kind of sketchy. You would have to manually block your calendar. How do you invoice people? How do you make sure that you are protected? Is there a rental contract in place? It's risky on your end. And then from the guest perspective, it doesn't seem very professional and it sounds like it could be a scam. And then my last reason for wanting to go ahead with a direct booking website is just kind of a safety thing and diversifying the sources of where I'm getting potential guests. I hope this doesn't happen to me or to any of you, but I have heard some horror stories of how people get banned or kicked off of Airbnb or Vrbo because of some security camera that is misplaced or a misunderstanding. It doesn't sound like it's a frequent thing by any means, but for those people who it's happened to, they would block their account and cancel all their existing bookings. It sounds really scary. To me, it just feels kind of risky to continue putting all of my eggs into one basket. Now, if there are so many obvious benefits, how did it take me over 6 months to decide whether or not it's worth it? Let's talk about the cons. The first big one is the time initially setting up and also the maintenance time. One of the reasons I picked Lodgify is because they help with the initial onboarding so that you are setting up your account correctly, and they've been so tremendously helpful in getting my stuff switched over from another provider to them. And this is not a thing just because I am making a video. It's available to anyone who signs up for a service, this free onboarding. Their website builder also looked pretty easy, and there were already so many templates to choose from. Now, easy doesn't mean zero work. You're still going to have to invest some time to setting it up correctly in the way that you want to, uploading your pictures and whatnot. I will report back on exactly how much time I end up spending on this initial setup, because I'm sure you're all curious to know, but right now it's still kind of a work in progress as I'm kind of simultaneously working on a few different things. I think another thing I want to point out on the topic of time is that if you don't already use a property management software, some of the automated guest messaging and cleaner messaging, that might help save you some time. So maybe you will get some of the time back that you're investing. The second con that I considered was money. How much is it going to cost me per month to be accepting these direct bookings? If you weren't already using a property management system, this would be a new cost that you're adding to your monthly expenses. For me, I was already paying for software every month to do the guest messaging and the cleaner and the syncing of the calendars. So switching over was actually not any more expensive for me personally. And now I have the additional benefit of having these website templates that I can work with. I'd say before you commit to subscribing long term, you can try out their 7-day free trial and see what kind of features they offer if this is something of value to you. In addition to the monthly cost of the software, when you do receive direct bookings, there is the payment processing fee from Stripe or whichever online payment processor you decide to use. Usually that's about 3% of the transaction cost, which obviously is less than what Vrbo or Airbnb would take, but I also don't want you to have the impression that there are no more fees ever. The third concern that I had about having direct bookings was about the damages and the insurance and just the general security type stuff. Airbnb offers their air cover, they do guest verification, or at least their IDs need to be verified. And so understanding what I'm getting into when I'm accepting bookings directly from guests was really important to me. We'll start with insurance. Insurance for short-term rentals, you would have ideally had it anyway. I think although a lot of us find reassurance with AirCover and Airbnb, for example, the truth is when I have filed for damages and reimbursement in the past, it actually goes straight to the guest anyway. You know how you submit a ticket in the resolution center? It actually goes to the guest asking them to pay for the damages, and this is the reason why, this is the receipt and whatnot. It's only when the guest declines it or doesn't want to pay, then it kind of goes to Airbnb for someone else to adjudicate. And if Airbnb sides with me in that dispute, then I would get paid out under AirCover. So while AirCover is something, I don't entirely rely on it, and I've always carried additional insurance to help protect myself and my property. Regardless of whether you find AirCover protection to be sufficient and whether you carry your own insurance, you can't deny that having this formalized process of how reimbursements and how disputes will be handled, it kind of sets up a clearer expectation for both the host and the guest that there are repercussions to damages and people not holding up their end of the deal, whichever side you're on. Airbnb and Vrbo also additionally do a lot of helpful stuff in the background, like ID verification, and they have an algorithm for detecting potential bookings that are parties, and they have some screening for potential fraud. If you want to go with direct bookings, you may want to consider a few different security measures to help protect yourself. I would A, have insurance like we talked about, and B, I would also set up a rental contract, and there are templates you can use on Lodgify. And then C, I would choose to either add a security deposit, which on Lodgify would look like a hold on the guest credit card, so that it's like pre-authorized for a certain amount to cover for damages if needed. Or alternatively, they have a lot of third-party app integrations, like with Superhog and with Safely, that perform the ID verification and guest screening, and also offer a damage protection plan, damage waivers, and the security deposit, kind of functioning as the replacement to what you would have missed from Airbnb and Vrbo as far as security measures. I'll include the pricing for Superhog so that you have a complete picture of what everything altogether might cost, but keep in mind that this varies based on how many properties you have, which country you're residing in, and whatnot. Anyway, I'm planning to do a more detailed video in the future about these topics, so if you have any specific questions, let me know so that I know I'm not missing something, and then I can also help address them for future viewers too. Alright, so weighing the pros versus the cons, how do you decide? It all comes down to how you're weighing the risks versus the benefits. So for example, do you already use a property management software like I do? If so, how do the features and the cost compare between all the different options now that you're viewing them as both a property management software plus a direct booking website? Another thing you might want to consider is the revenue in absolute numbers. Like, how much are you making? Are you talking about $100,000 a year? Or are you talking like $5,000 a year for a spare bedroom that you sometimes rent out? I think this helps give background context to how much are you spending on the software per month versus how much are you bringing in per month. What is that percentage? For me personally, as we've shared in a previous video, the beach house brings in over $100,000 in revenue per year. And so the potential fees that could be saved, which is like 15 to 20% of that $100,000, that would justify some of the money and time that I have to invest into setting up a direct booking website. And in terms of establishing a brand and broadening our reach and potentially generating more revenue through more customers, that potential revenue, even if it's just a couple bookings, that can totally offset our subscription costs for the whole year. Contrasting that, if you only host your space part-time and if it's quite an economical lodging option, then I'm not quite sure if it makes sense to go through the effort and pay for a monthly service like this. Unless if you have multiple of listings that are similar and you're banding together with other people who are like setting up this collective of low-cost couch surfing options for college students, for example. Anyway, if you're on the fence, I would just get the free trial and test out some of the options before you decide, yeah, is this something I want to spend money on? Ultimately, after much deliberation, I think this is the right choice for me and for our beach house Airbnb. I'll have some future videos walking through the whole setup process if you're interested, as well as some SEO or search engine optimization tips that I have learned. I'll be sharing whatever I'm learning on this process, both the good and the bad, so that it can maybe help you decide whether this is a route that you would like to take. If you have thoughts or questions about this topic, feel free to leave them below. I'd love to know what you think. Once again, thank you Lodgify for partnering with me on this video, and I will see you again next week. Bye!